Okay, it is July 11th. We're now going to enter into the Charlton Board of Health meeting. Board members Jonathan Sanborn, Matt Gagner are present. We kind of have a crazy Board of Health meeting today. This meeting is going to take a recess at probably 6:40, and we're going to convene into the Selectmen's room for some business to deal with over there, and then depending on this meeting, may or may not return to this meeting to complete our meeting if we haven't done so prior to that time. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach out for the acceptance of the prior meeting minutes for June 13th, 2023.
Make a motion that we accept the prior meeting minutes for June 13th, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the minutes are signed and pass. I also see, let's go into Flint Road landfill. Basically, we have two landfills in Charlton, and the state has mandated that we do some additional testing for PFAS, and we discussed it with DEP. We didn't do it right away, and then we came to some agreements, and we decided it was finally time. We had the funding available, and it was the right time to do that. So we moved forward with the PFAS testing. Gary, correct me, but was it specifically at 54 first?
We agreed to do, the town agreed to do 54 and 90 together. We did 54 first. A week later, we did 90.
Okay, so we did 54 Flint Road first, got some results, had some elevations and some hits. So we had to reach out to some of the homeowners within the 500-foot radius, and then, like Gary said, a week later, we had some additional hits. Was it one additional hit on the 90 Flint Road?
3 locations, but one. They did trigger one additional property.
Triggered one additional
within
property.
500 feet, but DEP mandated others on Burlingame Road.
On Burlingame Road.
Properties within 500. Wells weren't in 500, but DEP mandated the town test those.
Okay. So, anyways, PFAS is a relatively new contaminant to this board. We are very familiar with water issues in the town and landfill contaminants. This is a new one that has been brought to our attention, and because we're trying to do some additional work at the landfill, DEP decided now's the time to get us to test for these contaminants. Quite frankly, this board was on board with that prior to mandating it anyways. We just had to wait till we had the proper funding to do so, which again, we were able to pull that off and move forward with it. So Gary, I'll let you take over right now, and just we have a discussion on what's going on up there. I know there's some residents out there that have concerns or may have questions, and whether it's about the landfill design itself or if it's about the PFAS testing, or regardless of what it is, we'll be here for you. We do have that meeting at 6:45, so if we don't get all the questions answered, we may have to table the conversation until after that. But hopefully we get every question answered, and if anybody has anything. So Gary, I'll start with you if you don't mind. If you could bring everybody up to speed of where we are and how we got here.
Sure. So Ben Gould, my business partner, is here. Usually I come to all these meetings, but I brought Ben tonight. Ben is our LSP. He's much better versed in the toxicological issues relative to PFAS, so if there's questions from the residents, hopefully Ben or I can answer those questions. I'll keep the discussion as to where we stand, how we got here relatively short, and then we can talk to the PFAS specific testing at the homes, and if you want to entertain questions from the audience, you can.
And Gary, just for the record, just who are you and who is your company, if you don't mind?
Certainly. Gary Magnuson, I'm one of the owners of CMG Environmental. Ben Gould, my business partner, the other owner of CMG Environmental, and the licensed site professional. So, real quick, the town is working on capping the old landfill at 54 Flint Road. We working with DEP. We have some preliminary approvals. The preliminary site assessments approved. We recently submitted an approval to do test pits, or request for approval to do test pits for additional assessment to determine the extent of the landfill. That is pending approval, should be coming within the next couple of days. 2 weeks ago, we went to Conservation in town. We got 2 approvals from Conservation. One is an RDA, request for determination of applicability. We requested a negative determination. We received that to allow us to do the test pits within 100 foot of the buffer zone. We are not doing any test pits in an actual wetland, but we're going to be within 100 foot of a buffer zone. Conservation agreed with us and approved that. We also submitted what's called an ANRAD, which takes the wetland flagging that Ecotech, a company we hired through you guys, to do the flagging and get that approved and locked into place so that the engineering design can go based on factual approved wetlands delineations. The board agreed to that. So those 2 things are moving forward
Gary,
quite
I just
well.
want to, so is the ANRAD locked in?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
ANRAD's approved and locked in. So the wetland flagging that's been done is accurate and approved, and that the design will be based on those flags.
Yeah.
And at this point, there does not appear to be any landfill material in a wetland-defined area. We will be doing work capping the landfill within the buffer zone to the wetland, so within 100 feet. Significant amount of work within 100 feet, because the wetland is essentially at the backside of the landfill. We are working on 2 other issues here. One is some issues with road alignment on Flint Road to get some survey information resolved. I'm working with Andrew on that and the surveyors to get that resolved. It's property boundary issues. It's basically town property versus town property where the 2 end. Not a big deal, but we have to get it fixed. DEP won't approve it until that's done. It's in the works. Access agreements, there is one neighbor, the Jacksons, we've been communicating with them. I will be getting a draft access agreement to the board soon and get that approved and get that in.
Okay.
I think you said it pretty well. PFAS testing is not mandated in landfills at this point. It will be in the future. DEP asked this town to do the testing at both landfills. The town did it, as Matt said. The detection of PFAS in the landfills at concentrations greater than 20 parts per trillion, which is the drinking water standard, did trigger immediate notification to Mass DEP within 72 hours. We, CMG, notified the board. The board certainly gave us approval. We notified DEP of those within a day. DEP then said, as we told you they would say, sample all homes with drinking water wells within 500 feet. Board gave us approval to do that. We started that process. As I said, DEP also requested that the 5 homes on Burlingame Road that are, their properties are within 500 feet, not their wells, be tested. So we've been reaching out to them. As a quick summary as to where we are with testing, we've sampled 15 locations at this point. I don't want to say homes because 2 of them are not homes. One is the DPW and the other is the
Animal shelter.
animal shelter. So 13 homes have been sampled, 2 properties have been sampled. Other than that, we have found detections at 8 of those homes. None of the detections exceed 20. Most of the low detection we have is a 2.8, I believe, 2.7. And the highest we have is a 13.9. So nothing's above 20. Mass DEP requirements per the notice of responsibility that they sent to the town once this became an issue clearly states that you will test all homes within 500 feet of properties. If there is a detection below 20, you will provide bottled water. The approval from Mass DEP also clearly states that you will test, you will continue to test and assess for these IRA conditions. So we have to test quarterly. There's a lot of people here today because I've done most of the sampling myself. I've spoken with many of these people and informed them that we're going to do what DEP is required to be done. The board has approved that scope of work to continue to test and assess. The reason this is an issue, and the reason it's an issue at 2, which is 1/10 of the standard, is because it's been detected in the landfill. The fact that it's detected in a house or a private well, Mass DEP considers that what they call a CEP, a critical exposure pathway. So they say that it's in the landfill, it's in the drinking water well. The assumption is there's a clear connection between the 2, and we need to eliminate and mitigate that, and providing bottled water mitigates that. We still have 9 more homes 9 more sets of data waiting. Of those 9, 5 have been sampled. 4 more either are scheduled to be sampled, and I have 2 that I've got 1 that's non-responsive so far. Left 2 letters right on the door. Tried phone numbers; they're not seeming to work. And I have 1 other one that I've communicated with a couple times, just haven't gotten an access agreement yet, or access yet. So of the, we're going to be about 24, 25 locations. I only have 1 so far that's been non-responsive. So it looks like we'll get access to everybody. I think one thing that's very important for this board to understand and the public to understand is the original trigger is 500 feet from the detections within the landfill. Once we had a detection at each house, or any house that we had a detection, we then take that radius and put a 500-foot radius from that well. So I have a couple of maps here. I don't know where they are, Ben. Are they right here? Yeah. So I'm sure the public and everybody can't see these, but there's a radius, 500-foot radius around each well. Each time we detect something, we just extend out a little further. So, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
So that's what I have to offer the board, and we can certainly take questions from the board or from the public.
So just before we do that, I just want to back it up a little bit. So the PFAS, how long has this board kind of known about it? Like, was it a year ago or so, a year and a half ago, where the state was actually allowing for free testing for PFAS and was willing to offer up a resolution to it or something, and they were trying to get, was it like 40 residents in a town, and there was this program that it didn't go so well for DEP. Our board always said this is a voluntary program, not mandatory, but there was concern about that PFAS, that if you had it, then where did it come from, and it could complicate things for the homeowners down the road, and that's why this board didn't really press too hard for that. But that's the first hearing of this PFAS, Gary?
Publicly and actively, DEP reaching out to get information. Yeah, DEP through UMass had a program. They were trying to collect 40 homes in all, well, not in larger rural residential communities. That I think it was more than 10,000 residents, and I think 60 or 80% of the homes were on wells.
Yeah.
So they reached out to all those communities, and it was a voluntary test. They provided the containers, did the test. If there were detections, you could become a disposal site yourself. So some parties were not too comfortable with that. I know that there were, and Jim, maybe you could speak to this, I think there were 6 or 8 homes in Charlton that did test under that program.
They did, yes.
And there were some detections. I don't believe any were above 20, based on information
I think 1.
Okay.
1. Only 1.
So Mass DEP would then come in, and if they were above 20, they would address the situation. But that's really the first public.
Yeah. And then so for this board, it kind of, as we went forward with the capping of the 54 Flint Road landfill, that's when specifically Mary Jude Pigsley from DEP said, it's out there, PFAS, it's a forever chemical, it's there. Your town has it unless you have a lucky horseshoe and you don't. So she was pretty certain that we did have it. She wanted us to do testing immediately. We didn't have the funding to do testing immediately, so I think we waited maybe 1 quarter, maybe 2 quarters to get the appropriate funds. 1 quarter. Town administrator was on board. This board was on board with everything, so we moved forward with it. So I believe the general conversation is about the PFAS. Just before we get into it, can you just tell us a little bit what it is and why it's so bad, and like why now? Or can you, Ben?
We'll let Ben answer that one.
PFAS, per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances, mouthful. First of all, they're entirely synthetic. These do not occur in nature. There have a lot of fluorine in it. Fluorine is not particularly common. It's never free. It's an extremely reactive. In fact, it's the most reactive of all the elements. So anytime fluorine is connected to something else, it sticks. It does not want to come off. Speaking of stick, the original fluorinated compound was Teflon, which I believe DuPont stumbled across in 1938. And I have a degree in chemistry, so you hear this story. Most people wouldn't have heard it. Absent-minded chemist left something boiling on his lab bench, went home for the weekend, came back, and it was just this mess goo. And he thought, well, I could throw it away or I could test it. And he tested it and found out nothing sticks to this. We could use for this. So that's how Teflon came about. Became more and more widespread, starting in the 50s and 60s. Related compounds were developed to be for waterproofing purposes. Stain resistant, Scotchgard has PFAS in it. Another use that came along is food wrappers. Your hamburger, you get it, Burger King or wherever. The reason that the grease doesn't soak through the packaging is it's got this PFAS coating on it, or a coating that contains PFAS in it. Another major use is in firefighting. Aqueous firefighting foams, AFFF, contain PFAS compounds. They're really good because it does not burn. It can handle extreme heat, and it will suffocate the fire, block out any oxygen. So when you have a petroleum type fire, you get diesel burning or something like that, the best solution is to smother it, because if you pour water on it, you blast it out. You know how this works. And you actually spread the fire rather than putting it out. So AFFF is used quite commonly in firefighting. These sort of uses became more and more widespread. There wasn't a lot of toxicological studies done on these compounds, primarily because they're not naturally occurring. So it wasn't something that was available that some toxicologist, someone said, I'm going to study that. So it wasn't until probably the 70s that anyone started paying attention to it. And it wasn't until after 2000 that we started getting some real numbers to know what risk is involved in these compounds. And it took EPA even a long time to come up with a standard. Sorry, I don't know the exact date that EPA came up with their standard. I think it was 2018. They looked at all the available data. There are, at last count, well over 14,000 PFAS compounds that are known and cataloged, but not all of them are commonly used. There's several that are in very common use. Two of them in particular, which are given shorthand names of PFOA and PFOS, which sounds an awful lot like PFAS, PFAS, but it's just because of the way that the names work. That PFOA and PFOS, EPA came up with a drinking water standard of those two combined, add them together, has to be less than 70 parts per trillion. I think that was 2018, I'm not sure on the date. Other interested people looked at it and said, you know, there's more than just those two out there. There's a lot more than those two out there. So let's look at some of the other ones. What Massachusetts did was they looked at the set of available information and said, there's 6 compounds that have enough information on them to feel comfortable putting a risk number on, and they're all closely related to those PFOS, PFOA that have been very well studied. So what Mass DEP has done is set a drinking water standard statewide of 20 parts per trillion, nanograms per liter, for those 6 compounds combined. Call it PFAS 6 for short. So that came out in October of 2020. So not that long ago. We all know there was a pandemic. Things got a little crazy for a while. So now we're getting back to normal, and DEP is pushing aggressively to identify where there is PFAS. EPA has revisited their information, and they decided that the numbers that they had were not strict enough. So they have proposed a standard of 4 parts per trillion for PFOA, 4 parts per trillion for PFOS. They haven't offered a standard for the other compounds yet. They are still studying them, but they're well aware of them. That number of 4 is kind of scary because just look at it.
Trillion.
Yeah, parts per trillion with a T. So our PFOA numbers and PFOS numbers here. One of the homes, let me double check here, 2, 3, 4, 4 of the homes, as Gary pointed out, we've sampled 15 homes. 8 of them had detections, but nothing exceeded the 20 parts per trillion number. By just scanning this information, there are 5 of those homes. If the EPA standard takes effect, they would have exceedances of the federal drinking water number. And once EPA proposes it, it's going to be closely followed by DEP accepting that as the state drinking water standard also. So that becomes another issue of exceedances here. So these compounds have an interesting and kind of frightening blend of physical properties. We know they're nonstick. That's what makes them widespread. They're useful. They have relatively high solubilities for something that's so toxic. They have quite low toxicity numbers, which means that they're toxic at very low levels. They do not volatilize hardly at all, and they're almost impossible to destroy. A regular fire won't do it. If you put them into an incinerator with an oxygen jet at 1,000 degrees centigrade, which is something like 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, they will decompose, but they don't necessarily go away. They might just break up into smaller PFAS compounds that are also toxic. So it's extremely difficult to deal with these things. In drinking water, it's not that hard to pull them out of the drinking water. Standard charcoal filters will do it, and there's some that are a little more fine-tuned specifically for the PFAS compounds that do a much better job of pulling it out. So that blend of physical properties makes it sort of a nightmare in drinking water. They're extremely widespread, quite toxic, quite soluble, and really difficult to get rid of. The USGS published a paper just 2 weeks ago, which is a survey that they did nationwide where they're trying to identify how widespread is this. And as it turns out, if you're in an area that has historically been industrialized, such as the entire eastern seaboard, the entire Great Lakes region, almost all of California, a lot of Texas and Louisiana, those areas, also middle of the country, St. Louis area, those areas tend to have PFAS detections 75% of the urban areas, 25% of the rural areas. They believe that the reason the rural areas have this is a lot of farms use municipal sludge, wastewater treatment sludge, as a fertilizer, and it spreads onto the fields. Obviously, if this stuff is in the drinking water, it's getting into the wastewater, and it shows up that way. There's a few areas of the country that don't seem to be affected. Hawaii, the Rockies, most of Alaska seems to be exempt, but those are the very rural areas of this country. So it's extremely widespread. It's scary just how much of it is out there, and it's a significant health hazard. So is that a good summary?
That was pretty good.
Okay.
Yep. So bottom line, it's cancerous, right?
Yes, it's a carcinogen.
Yep, so it potentially could cause cancer.
Mhm.
The tolerance, everything that we've ever done, Gary's never been in the trillions. It's always been, what, in the billions?
Parts per million, parts per billion. I've been doing this for 30 years, and we just started, under normal circumstances, collecting data in the parts per trillion in around 2018, 2019.
Right.
We do have, associated with the landfills at 54 and 90 Flint Road, is 1,4-dioxane.
Mhm.
That actually has a drinking water standard of 300 parts per trillion.
300 parts per trillion.
Yeah,
Remember that went
it's-
from 3 to 0.3
Yeah.
ppb. But we would just say 0.3 parts per billion because we never even talked in parts per trillion.
Right.
But it is 300. But yeah, we would.
But this one, we're looking at low parts per trillion.
Mhm. Got it. Okay, so, thank you for the summary, appreciate it. I'm gonna open it up. Does anybody have any questions or concerns, or is there anything that this board can help anybody with the audience with as far as what's going on, whether it has to do with capping of the landfill, or this PFAS, or the 1,4-dioxane, or the bottled water? We're here for you, so anybody has any questions, throw them at us, and, sir, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ralph Freeman, I live on 12 Old Town Road. I've been tested for 1.4 dioxin, probably 2 years ago. My well tested positive for it. So the Board of Health has been great enough to give us drinking water since then. So we've had drinking water, regular bottled water since, well, at least 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, and Gary can answer that. I've known Gary for a couple of years now. But now I've got detections of the PFAS also. So now I get a little concerned, because now I got 2 cancer-causing agents in my water. And what can we do about it to correct that? I mean, I can't, when we bought the land, to put up a house, obviously we had to drill a well, get a permit and stuff. We were never told there could be possibilities of contaminants in our drinking water. And again, you don't know, because you know, it depends on how deep your well is. I mean, your well could be 100 feet, your well could be 500 feet. Mine just happens to be 500 feet, and we had to frack it. And that's the biggest part, I think, of why we probably have these chemicals in there, because of the fracking, though. And
Yeah, so let me add to this like I know what I'm talking about, and I really don't. But we went through a similar situation on the Southbridge landfill with all those residents. And there was a lot of concerns about the chemicals in the water, right? People don't want to brush their teeth. They don't want to take a shower in it, fill the swimming pools, feed the animals. And we had a study done through a doctor, this board did.
Mark Nascarella.
Yeah.
Doctor.
And, you know, like, what's the effect on the person? Like, how far can you go? And there's that commercial. Does anybody want a bottle of water, you know, chemicals of water? That nobody does. But what they said was, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you want to brush your teeth or wash the dishes or do certain things at the house, it was incidental consumption, and it means that there's not enough to affect the majority of your daily life. So if you want to take a shower, it was okay. The swimming pool was fine. Even brushing the teeth, it was okay. But I think what they're trying to avoid is, you know, that morning cup of coffee, or I don't know about boiling pasta or whatnot, but there was just certain everyday drinking habits. They just don't want you drinking it. But as far as the majority of, what's in my water and how does it affect me, for the most part, besides the drinking aspect, this stuff is safe. And
I'll elaborate on that a little bit.
Thank you.
So I think this board did a nice job a while ago. Before this testing, they sent a letter out with a fact sheet to everybody in the area that said, there's some PFAS concerns. Here's a fact sheet from Mass DEP, and that was a July of 2022 fact sheet. Mass DEP recently updated that fact sheet. It's now May of 2023. We have a few copies here. And I think you've heard me use these exact words before. People much smarter than me figured that out, and I'm not going to speak to what that means and what the toxicological components there are, but that does kind of talk about what you just said. Clearly, we don't want people drinking it above 20. DEP says that. Clearly, it makes sense to eliminate the exposure below 20. People with immune deficiencies, people that are pregnant and nursing, you have different exposures. So what I would like to offer is we'll put that on the town's website, give anybody here who wants a copy of DEP's fact sheet. And then you can certainly come to this board, but we have to rely on decisions that Mass DEP and EPA has made. And that document talks directly about, can I drink this water? Can I boil this water? Will it change it? Can I take a shower in it? And essentially, you're correct. You don't want to be drinking it, but the incidental exposures, in general cases, aren't horrible. But again, you do want to do what you can do to minimize that exposure. So
what will the town be doing about it in our drinking water? So it is in our coffee, it is in our pasta. What is the town's plan for that?
so if you're come up positive, we, the town, need to provide you with bottled water.
We have not been, and it is in our drinking water.
Okay.
which address are
We're
you?
at 47, so we have a low amount, but it is in our water.
No, you're not. You have J detections.
Yeah,
Okay.
those,
Okay. Let's talk about
Let's
the J
talk about the
detection.
J detections.
Yep.
I'll try it easy. and then I'll let Ben speak to it more difficult. Mass DEP has clearly said a J detection does not get added in the PFAS 6. J detection is below a level that the lab can detect
Right point.
with the precision that they need. So, and I can show you your table. The lab can basically detect it down to around 2. You have some J detections in your well at 1.2, 1.4, and 0.6. So the lab says it might be there, it might not be there. I can't truly define it with any level of accuracy in anything below 2. So you have the J detections. That we have J detections in a few other wells. This J detection issue was a significant concern at the Southbridge landfill when the 1,4-dioxin was detected over there. The same problem we're having is these regulations are almost ahead of the lab's ability to detect the information. So a person sitting at the computer can do all this toxicological information and say, well, we need to be to 4. And the lab's saying, I can't do it. And the analogy I've used for a few people here, and hopefully it works, is if you have a speedometer in your car, and Flint Road is a hill. So if you put your car in neutral and you hold your foot on the brake, and it says 0, but you're rolling, that's what your J detection is. You're not going a mile an hour. The speedometer can't read it, but you're actually moving. So DEP, again, people smarter than me, have said J detections are not considered a detection, a real detection, but you have a real concern. It could be there.
Before you guys bounce out to your meeting, I kind of wanted to add to what Ralph was saying, and I'm just going to cut to the chase on this. These PFOs, PFAs are not going anywhere. What she's asking about, even though she's a J detection, from what I've read and from what I understand, that can change. It can go up, it can go down, it can be one thing one day, and it can be something completely different another day. So they're still at risk. I'm aware of the lawsuits on DuPont, 3M. I've read up on all of this. Has the DEP jumped in on the bandwagon to claim any of that money? And if they have, a savings to me would be to put systems in the houses such as osmosis, charcoal I wouldn't recommend. We've been down this road before in our previous home. If you remember the auto flat car crushing incident on East Charlton Road, we were contaminated with benzene and MTBE. So, you know, we've been here, so this was upsetting, disappointing to know that here we are again, we're going through this SH again. We want a system. You're talking ice cubes, you're talking, there's so many things that you don't think about with this water. We don't know from day to day if we're now exceeding 20, we don't know if we're at 10, because they do change. Wouldn't it be more cost effective to supply the homes with an osmosis system where you're just changing the filter?
I don't know the answer to that. It's food for thought. I know I heard that. I'm sure John just heard what you said. Don't know what we can and can't do at this point, but I can say, to your point, we had, with the Casella issue up there, we had a house here with detections, a house here, and the house in the middle had no detections. The one across the street had a detection, and this one was like no detection, and it was like, okay, so that individual's like, well, I don't want to drink the water. My neighbors all around me have it, so
Right,
like,
but it does have to do with depth. We had a neighbor that was people that lived 200 feet from us.
yeah,
They had such a deep well that they were just, the benzene in their water was off the chart.
right.
However, our benzene levels were low. We had the MTBE. We still had it. These also fluctuated.
Yeah. So what we did though for that individual and others that were for whatever reason concerned about drinking their water, we promoted and requested, which was not mandated, but we asked nicely if the individuals, in that case it was Casella, would provide bottled water. And we didn't say you need to do this because that was not the approach with them. We asked them nicely, and what they did is they said, Matt, you get me a list of people. We're not just going to give it to everybody. You get me a list of people that are concerned about it, that have J hits or are within that area, or for whatever reason don't want to drink their water because they don't feel it's safe to drink, and I'll let you know. And I got a list together. My phone blew up, probably over 100 phone calls in a 2-day period. And I reached out, and I think there was 30-something houses, and we nicely asked Casella, and they said, yes, we will do that. Only for a little while, not forever, for a little while. We'll take it. So we were able to get bottled water for those residents, even though they didn't legally qualify for it, mandated through the state. And to that point, the temporary process was forever because they eventually got town water down there and it resolved that issue. The difference is, and this board's already tried to do that, is we talked about a voluntary bottled water program for people that, like yourself, that are in that area. But it's municipal funds, so it's not private funding. And for this board to say we can provide you with voluntary bottled water at the taxpayers' dollars for all the other people in this town, it becomes a more complicated issue rather than saying, yeah, it's no big deal, it's just some bottled water. So we have looked into that. I don't think we have a finalized answer on whether or not we can make anything happen with that, but that's what we did in the past, and that's what we tried to do for this project. But because the town at this point is the responsible party for these contaminants, the only way to get bottled water to you would be from town funding, and it's just not legal to say, yeah, let's do it. So I don't know about the J hit, if that considers a hit or not, but we certainly know who you are. I know Gary took a note on it, and we'll see what we can do at least to get the bottled water for you, so you don't have that concern.
And by the way, I do very appreciative of the water, sending us waters, dropping off bottles of water until we could get to the July 5th date, which we made it there, so we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, we try, and we had this testing before. It wasn't mandated. We reached out to Burlingame Road. We said, listen, you live at the bottom of the landfill. We will test your water for free. We're not out to get anybody. If it comes up clean, that's what we all want.
Right.
But if it doesn't, we all kind of want to know that too, specifically the homeowners, the landowners. And 1 out of 9 at the time said we do.
Yeah, but now I've gotten 4 out of the 5 that I need there.
Yeah.
And they've been very receptive.
So, and sir, I know we were talking, and then I had a thought, and I kind of jumped in, but did you finish your comment?
Well, kind of, but I want to say is, this is only some of the things that you test for. There's a million different things out there. It could be a lot more in our wells, so where do we go? We definitely, I think we have to get something put in our homes to take it out, because it's just, who wants to drink bottled water for the rest of your life, and it's just a hassle every time you do something. And we've been, like I said, we've been doing it for 2.5 years, which I appreciate. They tested for it, and they let us know, and they're supplying the bottled water. But again, like they were saying, it's in everything. You can't make you got to make ice cubes out of the bottled water. Everything. You can't. You get up in the middle of the night, want a cup of water. Now you got to go to the station or whatever to get the water. It's a lot, and not just bringing this up, but I've had cancer twice. I don't need it a third time.
And Jimmy, you're gonna say we're getting tight on time.
Yeah,
Do you think they'll bump us a little bit? You think they'll
Yeah.
rearrange the schedule for us? Tell them we need maybe another 20 minutes, 30 minutes in?
I'll ask, what do you want, Mr. Chairman, 15 minutes? I'll ask the chair.
7 o'clock. 7 o'clock?
7?
See what they can do for us.
Okay.
I'd say if we could get at least 20 more minutes, it would probably be helpful.
All right.
So the filtration system, Ann, I'll be right with you.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, the filtration systems, Gary, you said they work relatively well?
Mass DEP is using, when they're installing them themselves, they are using a specialized carbon, dual filtration carbon system. They work exceptionally well. I've done a ton of work for Mass DEP directly. Homes with concentrations well in excess of hundreds of parts per trillion. So homes that are 7, 8, 900 parts per trillion. 3 years later, testing quarterly, no detections.
Right. And it did work well, but the big issue with those carbon is you've got black soot, okay? That's in your toilet, that's in your sink, it's coming out of your faucet, and then the carbon has to be changed out every so often. So now you've got toxic carbon.
Right.
Well,
And what do you do with that? And that's a big expense. It was,
DEP is promoted. They've looked at reverse osmosis. You got to get rid of that as well.
right, but it's a much smaller.
Well, you can do reverse osmosis under sink for the drinking water, but then you're back to the same problem of, do I want to shower? Do I want
Right.
to cook my pasta? So there are multiple options, multiple scenarios. What Mass DEP has been doing on properties that they don't have a defined responsible party for, and that they are putting systems in. They're putting a dual carbon system with massive filters in front and behind, and UV protection for bacteria. And they work fantastic. And like I said, I've personally been involved with probably 30 of those installs and sampled hundreds of them with non-detect results. And again, we're talking many of these in the multiple hundreds of ranges. So these, we're talking 13. A carbon unit like that is going to last 5 years plus with no maintenance. So yes, it will work.
705, perfect. And just like my comment about the filtration systems is, yes, they may work well, and that's why I just wanted you to confirm that they do work well, but it's a royal pain in the neck. 4 times a year, you got somebody knocking on your door that needs to test the water, get in your basement to change the filters. It is not like, oh, that's an easy way to do it. It's people live in their house. They don't want, even Gary, the greatest guy on planet Earth, we don't want him coming to our house 4 times a year. Hey, I got to get in your basement. It's
Well,
just,
he has
These
been.
are all my friends.
yeah.
There's nothing different.
Joking.
That won't
You know,
change anything.
But so even like in an okay situation when we get to the filtration systems, as long as we're being mandated by the state and perhaps EPA down the road to test these things, it's like the home run, and is public water. That's the home run. Once you have that's the permanent solution, and that's a long road ahead, but that's ultimately why a lot of people have public water. So Ann was ahead of you.
A couple points. I agree we need a whole house filter because it is so difficult to have to run downstairs to get a glass of water. And my other point is, I was washing dirty lettuce in my kitchen sink using the tap water, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm using tap water to clean my vegetables with. How dangerous is this? And you just think, how much of this now are you consuming? Because there's no way you can use bottled water to do this, nor would I want to use that much bottled water, because I feel that using all these plastic bottles, we're just making more of a problem. And you were also, another point is you're talking about people coming into your house so many times a year to need to clean the filters. Even on the water cooler jugs, when I read the directions, you're supposed to have those cleaned 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So we need to have those cleaned. And
We do have them on a schedule for cleaning, and they will be cleaned.
okay, great. And I know my family, there's 5 adults in the family, and just in drinking water, and for the little bit of, I've been thinking twice before I make a pot of pasta because you use so much water for it, and we've been using over 1 of the big jugs a day, and we're trying to be frugal with it, but that's just with her drinking water and a little bit of cooking and making ice.
Even if you guys did do public water, where would you guys pull it from?
Southbridge.
Southbridge?
Yeah.
Because I know Charlton, my concern was, isn't it very high with arsenic?
Yes.
So wouldn't we be fighting that too if we pulled it from
Yes,
Charlton?
it's either, the issue with Charlton Water, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, doing test wells.
Yeah.
The best ones were actually down around Buffinville. But there was always, the issue was either too much arsenic, or if the arsenic levels were low enough to mitigate, then it was the quantity. They couldn't get the quantity from it. So they've put a hiatus, I think, on that.
Yeah, and I will add, so right now the water is primarily coming from Southbridge, but as far as public water in the town of Charlton. But I know there's been all different talks up by the depot, up by like say Ronnie Seafood area, maybe coming through Spencer with water from there. I know that there was talk about at one time getting the water through Oxford. I know the pipes are in the ground coming down Route 20 through that. They're doing the project right now. I don't know if they're redoing these water lines, and the piping in the ground, to the best of my knowledge, the piping in the ground got damaged because it wasn't being used. It just rusted or rotted or whatever it was, and so I know that's been a problem. So John's absolutely right. Yes, Southbridge is where we're getting it from. I do know that the water coming from Southbridge is very, very good. They have their own facility. It's tested multiple times, and they're in full compliance with that. And I think the water line just went down Mugget Hill by the cemetery there, and I don't know, it's close,
Close.
but
I know it's over on Old Worcester Road.
It has been, there was a preliminary evaluation years ago about bringing about, public water is an option. Certainly I can't speak to how good of an option it is. We have to look, as the board's LSP and consultants, we have to look to continually assess the problem, which means you guys are going to be tested quarterly. And we have to look to continually mitigate and eliminate that. Associated with that will be a pretty detailed analysis of options. Drilling a public well, connecting to Southbridge. So all that has to get done over time. We're just in the infancy stages for this component of this project. The fortunate thing is we kind of went partially down the road with 1,4-dioxin in 2 homes. We're getting pushed, or we're going to go further down the road because now we have 8 homes that have detections. And I'm not even done sampling. So it just exacerbates the situation. And Matt's 100% right. And DEP wants, that's what they want. They don't want you guys on bottled water. They don't want you on treatment for a long period of time. They want either it to be cleaned up or public water. And Ben, I think Ben's...
Is there anywhere for the town to get any financial help with this from these companies that created this?
Jim?
Yeah, I can't speak.
If I may, through the chair, Andrew Golas and I speak a lot. He's tried many times to get the water line from Southbridge to come through Gulford Road, which is now not a road anymore, and I live on Gulford Road. That's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's not something that is going to happen in the next years. It's a battle that goes on. Municipal water is the final say, but there's only so much water that Southbridge is going to provide. Sure. And as far as funding, Andrew's always looking for funding to improve that and build that road back up and try and bring the infrastructure. But unfortunately, they're paving it right now. So they'll be digging that road back up again. So ultimately, Southbridge water is great. It's tested. But I think ultimately, when everyone turns their tap on, no matter where you live, you expect your water to be clean. If you have a well, it's not. There's natural arsenic veins. There's all kinds of contaminants. So I always recommend, I have filtering in my own house, and I bought a Berkey, which is a backup filter. It's a stainless steel, and I test the water after that, and it's perfectly clear. And I keep it on my counter. But I know it's inconvenient to buy ice cube trays and stuff, but still, you can still make ice, and it's still safe. So you have to do what's best for yourself. People take it for granted when they turn the faucet on, they just drink their water. Mm-hmm. Well, it's probably, water gets more people sick than any other, either food or anything else. Water kills more people, all likely, because you drink dirty water, you're going to get sick and your body can't handle it. So these contaminants are in there. You'd have to drink, I think Dr. Narscarella, who did a study, said that if you drank MTBE, and we wanted to know about cancer rates and stuff, did it affect? It had no effect on the rates of cancer in Charlton. And you'd have to drink this continuously for 30 to 40 years to show any kinds of signs in your system. Unless you're, immunocompromised or you had some kind of underlying medical condition. So there are all kinds of contaminants. We have a list of, on all our well regs that we have to make sure, but I would say 90% of all homes built in Charlton need filtration and a deed restriction that Matt has signed hundreds of them that are built. So all new homes in Charlton already, they put the filtration system in, because they don't have the luxury, I wouldn't say a luxury, but the town's not gonna provide if someone had PFAS that's in the middle of the town. They may have it higher than you, and they're on their own. So,
And I would just say, one of the complications, and it's always complicated, is let's assume that we have public water at the intersection right there by the cemetery, Mugget Hill Road and Main Street, and I do believe we do. So, in theory, okay, so can we run it down the road, down Flint Road, and maybe uptown,
Old Town.
Old Town Road?
Back up
But the problem is, and this is a water sewer issue, not a board of health issue, but they don't allow a dead end. So you can't just run to these houses or run to those houses and be good with it. You have to provide a
Sir.
continuous loop wherever you go, because the water will go stagnant in the pipe if it stays too long too. So it's easy to think, well, I'm only a mile down the road or a mile and a half down the road or whatever the case may be. Correct, but the water line must continue, and that's why with the ExxonMobil spill and what just happened, it went all the way down Mugget Hill, up Morton Station Road, up Old Worcester Road, and made a pretty good sized loop right there. And that's one of the obstacles we face with your location. You know, I live on Freeman Road, and one road up for most of you, and it's like, well, how would they do it if I had issues on my road? And then in my brain, I'm like, okay, so they go down Freeman, they go up Corbin, then they go up Bond, and there's my loop. You know, I don't know what that is, 6 miles, 8 miles, whatever. And this neighborhood is the same way. There's no easy way. Gulfwood Road would be the way.
straight shot.
It would be a straight shot, but it doesn't sound like that's it. But this permanent water line conversation, this is, we're like years away from ever even that being realistic. It would be a miracle to happen. Sorry, I thought my phone was off. It would be a miracle to happen, and B, if it did happen, you know, I don't even want to throw a date at it, but 2030, 2028, I mean, there's so much involved to make that happen. And really what we want to do as a board is reach out to the neighbors, the neighborhood, and say, listen, this is what's going on. This is what we know about it. The best we can say is drink bottled water, because that's the best thing for your health and everybody in your household's health. And in the meantime, we will be a tool for you to help with questions, with concerns. Maybe you guys form a group and say, no, we demand permanent water, and then we try to help you that way. That was a big push, and that's what happened up at Casella. There was a group that got together and ultimately got permanent water in what, under 2 years, 3 years?
Very aggressive.
Very aggressive. It was kind of unheard of, but at the end of the day, that resident now has a permanent solution. So and I'm just saying it out loud, our board has always been an open door. So if we can help you, we will. With your water over there, I can't say yes or no, but I know we can definitely try for you to get you some bottled water. And I'm sure you're not the only one, you know. That's all I can really say what this board can do. There's not a lot we can do. We can't mandate anybody. We can't spend money that it's not allocated towards this. We can't do anything. All we can really do is reach out to the public and say, there's a problem with the water. You probably shouldn't drink it for right now. This is what we know about it. If you want to look further on it, look over here or look over here. And at any time, you're welcome to call us. And Jim is awesome, this office in particular. They're very good at, you know, answering questions and getting right back to you. I know I'm somewhat available, but if someone's looking for me, I always get back to them and help any way I can. I know John's the same way. John's been on the board a long time, and so that's all.
Yeah, I have to jump in here because I know you guys have been fantastic. You've got us water like instantly. We're at the house with water, but my neighbors here got the J report, and I know our wells are together because on the same vein because of things that have happened in the past. When I fracked our well, we blew the top off of their well. When I've bleached my well, they've got the taste at that house. So I know they're connected, and I just don't understand how mine is dirty and theirs isn't,
Depth.
So
where those wells are close.
I don't want to say this gets into the legality of it, because it does, but what the law says is if you have a hit of X, right, any hit, the town is required to provide bottled water. And being funded by other taxpayers, we are legal to give you the water. If by definition, not reality, but by definition, they do not have a detection, at this point right now, we do not have legally the funds to allocate to them. Now, I know we could sit here and agree for about days of all the laws in this state that don't make sense, and the common sense gets thrown right out of the window. Like the example where I had 3 houses all around them and the one in the middle doesn't have it, and yet we couldn't do anything for that person. So, but I think, and I agree with you, and they deserve bottled water. I'd be the first one to try and get it for them, and I will try to get it for them, paid by this town. But it's just the politics side of what we're allowed to do and what we can't do. And I hope that answers the question. But I disagree with it, but I think that's the right answer. So
It raises another question. Next quarter, we're all tested again. Theirs test high, we test low. We give them our water
negative. No. You're locked in
until there's a resolution.
until there's a resolution, meaning we have a conversation, DEP has a conversation with us specific to house number XYZ and all that.
4 quarters at a minimum, at an absolute minimum. It's likely longer than that. With the 1,4 dioxin, we went quarters and then we went semi-annual. We have to request from DEP to stop doing the testing and change it down. So everybody here is going to be sampled at least for 4 quarters. And if yours goes down, yours goes up, you're
Right, yours doesn't go anywhere, but she gets water instantly. Okay, so.
And I do need to make one comment while we're public here, and it's to this group and it's to this side of the table. I'm in the middle of this, and Ben and it seems, and I apologize, all the lab data seems to come in on Fridays, and it always comes in at 4 o'clock. I apologize, but that's just the way it is. So I open my email, and I get a detection. I communicate with Ben instantly. If I'm in the office or in the field, Ben, we got a detection. Yep, okay. My next text is these 2 gentlemen. I usually have a response within 3 minutes from these 2 gentlemen. I am then scrambling to find all the phone numbers to figure out how to call you guys. Matt or Jim are telling me I'm on the way already with the water, and I have to tell twice now. I've had to tell them, no, don't leave yet. I need to talk to the person before you pull up. I don't want the town of Charlton van in their driveway with water when they haven't even gotten a phone call. So DEP says you must provide bottled water in a reasonable time frame. Multiple cases here, within an hour of us getting the data, there's water at your front door. So I need to commend, I've worked for a lot of people. I've never worked for a board or a client that is as responsive as this group. And I also, to say to all of you guys, thank you for letting us in the house, communicating with me, taking my phone calls, because I have a lot of people I test private water for. They won't answer my phone. They won't respond to my text. They won't respond to my emails. You guys are great. So if we can continue to work together, we'll do the best we can, but Matt hit the nail on the head. It's not a perfect situation. But
And
I
DEP
did
is tough to work with too.
Jim?
They've been very
And
good.
I remember all that water I delivered to you, I paid for myself.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Yeah.
because on a Friday, I'm not getting the town to do a voucher and get ready fresh. We have to wait 2.5 hours each time we call to get a house added. The girls are on the phone for 2.5 hours to get you added. So I can't wait. So I'm down at Big Y constantly. I keep 11 cases in my car because if Gary calls me on a Friday, I'm saving myself a trip because I live probably 1.5 miles away from you guys. So it's quick to get there. So that's why I do it. But I'll eventually get reimbursed, but I can't ask any of my other workers to spend their own money on water for you guys. But I do it because, like Gary said, he'll call me at 4 o'clock on a Friday. I'm certainly not going to wait till Monday. And then Ready Fresh won't be there, and it takes them at least to get your account set up at least a week and a half to 2 weeks. And then they run out of water. They're running out of water.
So it's 7 o'clock. We've already bumped the selectmen one
Yep.
time. We have a meeting. So what I'd like to do is, if anybody first of all, does anybody have any questions that we didn't answer yet? Because if everybody's good, then moving forward, if anybody has any questions or concerns, please call this office and we can talk offline and one-on-one with you. We have homework for you. We'll see what we can do on that. But besides that, we're going to have to adjourn this meeting because we have a joint meeting with the select board. But like I say, if everybody's good, then hopefully we've answered the questions and we understand the situation that is going on over there. And if Ben, Gary, if you guys are good, I'd like to adjourn, or not adjourn, but take a recess in our meeting to meet over there.
Do you want us to be in the next meeting? Do you need us? If you need us, we'll be here. If you don't, no.
You're always welcome to
The
come. but
next
no.
month's meeting?
No. The next
We
one.
have
No,
not-
this meeting, I mean. for
We
the
have
Board
not
of Health.
posted the next month
Okay.
meeting. It will probably be in 3 weeks, John?
I can do 3 or 4.
3 or 4 weeks. We will know,
Because I just happened to fall upon this meeting. I didn't even know it was coming up. I knew last month it was canceled.
we kicked the can down the road like 2 times. And we bumped it a week and then we had a meeting. I was on the phone. We ended up having the meeting, I think.
Well, we only had 2 members. You need the third. Is not there.
I think
So
you guys
if
will probably
one
make a
can't make it,
decision
you can't have a
within the
meeting.
next week. If they call into the office, they'll be able to find it. It'll be posted, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Plus,
It's posted on the website.
It gets posted.
The
once-
town has a new website that kicked off today. Thank you to Andrew Golas. It's very easy to get online and do permits now. The Board of Health is updated. It's online permitting. We'll certainly post anything that will be on the
Can you do it this
website.
one?
So
2 weeks.
don't hesitate to call me if you need my card over there. If you call me, it doesn't matter what time, and you need water, I will get you water.
I'm here the next week. I'm not here.
If you run
That's
out,
all right.
something happens, I'm right down the street. You know that.
So what we'll do is, we're gonna tentatively, subject to change, but probably not, we're gonna say August 1 will be our next meeting.
Okay.
And so let's count on August 1 for anybody that has any additional questions or concerns or anything. And if it changes, where do we post it if it changes? On the website? And you can certainly call the office at any time and just say, hey, is the
Double
meeting
check.
on? But
I have one thing I wanted to ask. Gary, the folks here have access to maps?
So,
This map?
real quick.
Okay.
The reports that we just submitted are posted on Mass DEP's website. I'll leave a couple of my cards here. Anybody has a question, reach out to me. I'll email you directly the link to those. It's all public information. We just submitted 2 reports. So,
you're all welcome to stay, but
Are you going to adjourn here and go to the next meeting?
we
or-
just took a recess, we didn't
Are
adjourn.
you
Just
coming
a
back
quick
here to
recess.
adjourn?
Yes, I think it
And whatnot. What did we do on some of those residents? We didn't do a deed restriction. Well, didn't we put, say you know the issues with your house and you sell it to the next person that's, you don't know, and you go on and they
don't know, right.
Right, how do we protect the future? So what we did was, we wrote a letter, and it's not a deed restriction, so how did we do it? It was,
It's almost like a right to know thing that.
It's public information,
Yes.
right?
Well,
It's
it
on
goes,
the
it goes
assessor.
when you sell your house, so it goes with the deed, but it wasn't a deed restriction, it was a notice of something.
It's like a public notice that the property here has a filtration system for the following, and it goes into the assessor. So real estate agents are the worst ones to, when you're selling a house, about public information. Technically, you're below the standards. If they sold your house, they'd ask, are there any contamination of the drinking water?
And
They can
don't
say
have to
no.
tell you. And so they, because
it's
it's
below
about
the
money,
Yeah.
so,
Until it goes to the federal
limits of
until it goes
4?
to the federal standard.
Federal, yeah, which is not done yet.
But still, so we ended up, and we voted on it, and not for this area, but we might have set the precedence for the entire town. Down the road, there may be, if you decide to sell, a letter that comes with your deed that says, notice to buyer or whatnot. So the next buyer or the next landowner of those properties at least have an understanding of what's going on. But the deed restriction we felt was a little aggressive, and we didn't want to take away from anybody's property values.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of.
So we didn't do a deed restriction like, oh, we have a problem, yet we wanted to relay the information. So, a young couple that comes in and at this PFAS, I think, targets pregnant women, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It does. And so we just wanted to, and we talked about it, how do we get that information out there, especially if, this board goes away, it's 10, 20 years from now, none of us are here, but the water's still an issue over there. And so there may be a letter that goes, but it would be as soft a letter as possible. So, and I don't know, did we end up doing those, Jim? We did, didn't we?
We did. Yep.
Yeah. So that's one of the,
Yeah. I mean, number one, we want to be able to use our water safely. And number two, when we eventually want to sell the house, that we get full market value and.
right.
The neighbors, they just bought.
And she's prime baby age.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and I keep telling her, don't
You
drink
just
your
built a brand new
water.
house.
I'm
and
not
you
that
don't
yet,
do
so
it.
I don't have that problem. Like our kids who have the house, who knows what happens.
Yeah, but you just built a beautiful house as your neighbors did on Old Town Road, and you saw the landfill, you could see it right across the street from you. It
Yeah,
didn't-
well, we didn't realize it until that there was problems with, but everybody's gotta realize that there is, any landfill is gonna be chemicals in it.
But everything,
But, yeah,
everything.
and hopefully when you drill a well, you're not gonna get any of
Yeah,
those.
but even on a landfill, just you building anywhere, we have a list of VOCs that you'd have to filter out. And if they're in there, and most of the houses that are built, besides on Old Town Road, are not built next to the landfill, still have contamination,
A lot of it.
a lot.
Yeah, when we test for, how new is your house? Couple of years?
3.5, just before we moved in, the day before the pandemic,
So
shut everything right
your
down.
house was
Day
tested.
before.
Your house was tested for at least 90 to 100 and
Yeah,
150.
most,
Gary, how many?
this town tests for more chemicals than any other town in the
Yeah.
state.
112, 112,
There's 80, the VOCs, there's 86 on the list.
86.
it's gonna be
plus the-
87 now.
Yeah. Plus the standard potability test.
Mhm.
Plus you guys, plus you guys mandate uranium, right?
Yep,
Mhm.
28226.
226, 228.
Yeah. And, yeah, so this town is
Always
very
Gross
stringent.
alpha.
It cost me $1,400 for the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Before-
very expensive.
But I'd rather have a test like that, spend that money, and make sure everything's
Right.
okay.
And,
So-
and our policing is we can only do it at new construction because we have to sign off on that. Other than that, you sell your house to a
Existing
cash
house,
buyer, we
right.
don't know about it, there's no way to do anything
No?
other than try to get a notice to buyer or something like that. Hey, you might want to test your water here and there or whatnot, so.
When we had bought our house, before we bought it, Lycott was the company to use back then, and they were doing Southbridge water tests, and he came right up, he said, your well is cleaner than the Southbridge water, you should have no problem.
The Flint Road area is a little bit anomalous. Very few homes have any
Right.
treatment over there.
Right?
It's, for naturally occurring stuff, pretty anomalous.
I think the fluoride was one of the highest things at the.
But thank you
I know you
guys
saw
for
it
all
anyway.
your.
I do
Thank
have
you.
one more question.
Baby.
I know you're talking about,
August
it would be
1.
hard to,
Yes.
because the water has to go continuous.
Should
but
be here.
From
But if
Muggett
there's
Hill
any
and Main
questions,
Street,
just call
right
me.
down there.
Thank you very much.
Down
You're welcome.
Main Street, take a right on Flint, go down Flint, up Old Town, and then come back up across the hill.
Quarterly.
I know it's a ton of money, I know it's
Somewhere
gonna be.
between.
You'd have a massive tax increase just to get that.
Crossing two pipelines, well, the same pipeline twice.
And then you.
Oh, really?
The gas line that's there, yeah. But, well, and my point was on that conversation was, generally speaking, if it's a mile, say, to your house, the loop's gonna be 2 miles, because it's gotta come back. That's all I was saying. I wasn't saying it's not doable. It's just that it's
Oh, it's very expensive. Oh,
It's
I-
expensive. That's why you see fire hydrants sometimes just pumping water out. It's because they don't have a loop, but they have to keep the water clean.
So they gotta.
They just dump it on the ground, sometimes for years. The one up by CVS just dumped out there for years.
It ran for 3 years.
It ran for 3 years.
$60,000 bill.
Yeah, yeah, just dumps out on the ground, but it keeps the water fresh. There's a big water tank across the street from CVS. It holds, I don't know how many thousands of gallons up there. It's kind of up in the field. It's behind it. There's McClure Engineering. It's up in the field behind them. They can't keep that water fresh. It gets stagnant. And they put big fans in there and circulators, and they're moving the
Thank you
water
so
inside.
much.
And there's not enough usage to keep that water clean. So it's a big problem. And we've had, not arguments, but we've had discussions with Southbridge about, hey, we want Southbridge water. And they said, well, we're only gonna give you X amount of gallons a day. And then they say, if you're gonna put on 100 houses, each house is gonna use X amount of gallons a day. And the numbers weren't even realistic. And then they had people like fighting to get on this list so they could get the water. And then like they had, I don't know if you're familiar with the Rockingham Ranch, but it's down on North Sturbridge Road. So they used to have big venues, and it was a bigger place. But they figured this place for like 50 or 60 people all day, every day. And so they were allocated to have, I don't know how many thousands of gallons of water a day. And the reality was there's nobody even there, you know, and it shouldn't have even been, you know, 330 gallons a day, never mind in the thousands. So the dust kind of settled. Southbridge took a step back. Time went by, and we actually saw the actual usage and who's actually using water. And the fact of the matter is, we didn't have enough users in this town, and we were having a problem. And the saving grace was we finally hooked up Masonic Home, the Overlook, and they started taking enough water, which really helped the town as far as keeping that water moving. So it's a thing, and it's weird how Gary probably knows way better than I do, but you have a pipe. And you get the nasty stick to the pipe, and the pipe gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and the water flows through the center. And some of that water on the outside gets stagnant, and that's part of the reason they have to try and keep it all moving. So
It's not as simple as you think.
there's a lot to it.
But it's going to be evaluated.
It can be managed.
Yeah, it'll be evaluated.
One last question. If you had to put systems in the houses right now that are affected, how many would you have to put in? And
I don't know, Gary would know.
Well, this one, if it's
Like-
above 20, they have to put it in
right, a system.
system. If it comes back above 20, the DEP is mandated this board put it in. So it would be 1. If one house is above 20, it's 1. If 0 houses are above 20, it's 0. If 3 houses are above 20, it's 3.
But in the meantime, they don't have to, so I have to live with bottled water?
Right,
That
because
is the current legal.
in what Gary said, and he called it the CEP, that's the critical exposure pathway. So at the landfill, we have the contaminant. Now it showed up at your house. So by not drinking that water and drinking the bottled water, DEP says you've eliminated that CEP. The bottled water is the free card, if you will, the safe card for you.
But did they take the consideration, like you're saying, showering, like, and bathing?
Well,
and
showering
brushing
is not
teeth?
showering is not a concern with this.
No.
But
Right.
there are. Your concern is a long-term pain in the
But, right.
Right.
process, and that's been heard by this board.
No, again, you guys are great to deal with and everything like that, I appreciate it. You know, especially Jim always, we talk all the time about it. and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah,
but-
I'm the business, I know you. But I think most people, to be honest, Ralph, most people who have a well purchase Poland Springs anyway and don't drink it. But they use it for showering, use it for cooking, because they don't want to take a chance. Because like Matt said, the only way we have a way of knowing if there's contaminants is on a new build. Because they have to give us quantity first, quality after, and then filtration if needed, and then after filtration, another test before they can get in.
I'm not worried about the showers and stuff like
Right,
that, and brushing
yeah.
the teeth. I think there's just too little in there to do anything to be, like you said, 30, 40 years. Well,
So what, I live next to a junkyard, okay?
so-
I don't know what's there, maybe I
Yeah.
do, maybe I don't, but I don't wanna drink that water, and I got kids, I don't want them drinking that water,
Right,
right?
right.
So, what I did, self-funded, it wasn't given to me, I bought, what do you call it, point of entry system, a POET system?
Yeah, you put a carbon treatment system.
I
in
have a
your house.
carbon treatment system. I don't know what they cost nowadays, when I did mine, it was $5
I was
grand.
gonna say, maybe 7,000 or 8,000 at least.
In that range,
Yeah, but-
I don't know, is that high?
They're in the
How about
70.
reverse osmosis? Is that a lot more expensive?
Point of use reverse osmosis under the kitchen sink that just does the kitchen sink.
That's all it does? It doesn't do,
Well, you can get a small point of use underneath your kitchen sink. It's about $2 grand. Reverse osmosis for the whole house
15, 20?
15, 20 grand.
30, yeah.
There's no
That's what I
point in doing the
before.
whole house, but the carbon units,
So for
10 grand,
me,
8 grand.
right now, and I don't know what my water is, but, so I have like my kitchen sink, right next to it, I got the little faucet next to it. So my coffee comes out of that. If I was gonna boil pasta, I'd come out of that.
We use the bottled water for that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is not, you know,
Yeah.
not a problem, but.
But the bottled water can be a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, what I did was, I have that Poet system. So it's pressurized, like she was talking about, Ann was talking about washing lettuce, right?
Right.
So there's the treatment system Gary's saying will work, but now it comes to, well, who's paying for it? And that's where we're limited on what we can do. If you got the $5 grand or the $7 grand, I would say, maybe you do it and there you're done. You know, I'm not saying that's what you need to do, but I'm just saying as a recommendation, that's one thing you could do. Not everybody's got $5 or $7 grand. I mean, but I'm just saying, if you did and you put a Poet system, you could wash your lettuce, you could do your coffee, you could do the ice cubes, all of the stuff that you're probably going to be eating. But it costs a ton of money.
Right.
For the town to be able to do that, basically, legally, we have to be mandated by the state, and then basically, whatever the
They
state.
fund you?
Well, whatever the state, no, the town pays. It comes out of the
Comes
taxpayer.
out of, really?
Town of Charlton, yeah.
Oh.
But, because, so, whose fault is it? It's the town of Charlton's landfill. We are the responsible party. It was
But before all those
generations,
years and everything, now we're paying for our.
right. It was the generations before us
Right.
that used the landfill. That, I think that landfill closed in 87, 85.
70, 78, that one.
54 was in
Wow.
78, but how about the other one?
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah, late 80s.
Late 80s
So
on
40,
94.
almost 40 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so, now, I grew up in this town, I'm a victim, my trash used to go there growing up, I know it did, I remember playing in the dump, every Saturday, go out to Father, and we used to have a ball over there. You know, I remember the old one, 54, I remember that vaguely, and that,
All the towns have landfills, had them.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
they're all just transfer stations and they
right,
go to the big places, but.
yeah, but, so.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There's no easy button
No,
on it,
no,
and the
no.
easy button, unfortunately, has got a dollar bill right next to it, if you wanna do this, you gotta spend that, and, you know, but as far as what we can do, we're limited, but the first and most important to us is let everybody know about it. Hey, listen, this is what's going on. You might not want to drink your water. You might want to drink bottled water. You know, let's start with that. So now we know, hey, these guys, they know what's going on. And that's, ultimately, that's almost as much
All
as
you
we
can
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand, I appreciate it, really, I really do. It's tough, but,
It's tough.
yeah.
Well, you have a beautiful home,
I thank you.
and
I like it here. Yeah, it's
enjoy
great.
visiting.
I lived in, I grew up in Worcester, I was in Auburn for 20 years, I was in Millbury for 16 years, and now, this is where I'm staying for.
So are you at the bottom of the hill?
I am, no, right across from the
DPW garage.
DPW, the salt and,
The
sand.
animal? So
But
you-
I'm up one, I'm on a diagonal.
You're on the one.
These two, Mike and I think it's Linda, they live exactly right across the street.
Yep.
Okay.
You're not, are you on the map here?
Yeah, oh yeah, it should be, 12.
So here you go. This is would be 18. This is 16. Old Town. It's not shown on here. So there's a house at 16.
That's the ones that were just
14.
here, right? And
That's Linda. He's 12.
Okay.
10 is Warren.
Warren and Jansen.
This is 13. This is the lady who. This is the highest one.
They just bought
They
the
just
house,
bought-
yeah.
They're at 13. This
I-
is the dog pound.
I was just curious because I did a lot of work at
You probably did 16. The lot line's not
16
shown
and then the
here.
one next to it.
That's
What'd
his.
you do there?
I did the site work.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, Ravane Builders built the
Oh,
houses.
Ravane.
Yeah,
that's
well, I
for
dug the
Linda's.
dirt for them.
That's
Oh.
that's her. The lady that was sitting right here.
Yeah.
They're at 14.
Yes.
So you would have done theirs.
I did.
You did that one right there,
I
right?
did their work, but then the neighbor came out and we did something for the neighbor. I never
Oh, really?
was on that site. Ira
Oh.
did it.
Yeah, Ravane had called me and asked me for my engineer, who I use, because I build houses once in a while here and there.
Oh, yeah.
He called me, I said, you've been building for years, why would you call me? You must have an engineer. I said, yeah, I don't know.
Ravane's Ravane.
But anyways,
It's wild.
and I guess, I didn't know the standard, I didn't get, Gary must know, what my level was with the PFAS. what my level was on that.
Okay, I want to bring this Board of Health in back.
Sorry,
Rein
I'll
it
get going
back
so
in.
you guys-
Yeah, no.
We'll be outside here.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Have a good.
Thanks, we'll
Wait,
see you again, I'm sure.
Take care.
Okay,
Next to you.
um,
It was nice to sit next to you.
question, and I don't know, she's on the board, she hasn't sworn in yet, is she still legal to vote?
I would say no, to get sworn in. She was approved.
She was approved.
By the selectmen, but she needs to be sworn in.
She needs to be sworn in?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you need to be sworn in
I
first
would
by
say,
the town
yeah,
clerk.
and we should probably,
So even though
Wait.
they've approved you, technically you have to go before the town clerk. She'll swear you in and give you your rights and what you have to do, because there are things that you have to do. You have to complete your ICS, your conflict of interest, because now you're considered a municipal employee, and that comes with lots of restrictions.
yeah, I think once you raise your hand and you say whatever.
So I would
then
say
think you're
that
safe.
you'd have to wait till Karen swears you in and gives you your rights and your obligations to, and now as an official, a town official, you're, although you're appointed to this elected position.
Yep. So with that being said, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you have to roll, you're more than welcome to leave too. So that's up to you.
Is it okay if I stay and then I?
Yeah.
that way-
Yeah, you're welcome. We
Yeah.
want you to.
Yep.
We want you to.
Sounds good.
I'm just,
I'm here for the long haul.
Okay.
We'll
Great.
get you a nameplate as soon as possible, so there's nothing blank there.
Fancy.
Yeah. So, we had, variance request for Bay Path Road, was it?
Bay Path High School,
It's the high school itself.
the high school itself for a tight tank,
Okay.
by Mr. Jalbert. Tom knows about it, Tom has approved it, but no tight tank can be used without approval of the Board of Health.
Right.
The abutters are all on municipal water and they're too far away, but it still requires approval from the Board of Health.
Do we have any plan on this at all?
I thought you put it out, I haven't seen it, and I don't know where it is. Because Andrea's been gone for 3 weeks, so,
Okay.
and she had it around, and I could go start ripping stuff apart, but, she has it somewhere, but we scan everything now, we're trying to, of course, that scanner broke, but we try to scan things into the system, and I don't know if it's been scanned in yet. Len, Mr. Jalbert did call me, I talked to Tom the other day, he said technically, it's just a technical thing where the board would approve, because any tight tank has to be approved by the board, even though there's no abutters within 1,000 or 1,500 feet,
Right.
and everyone's on municipal water, and so are they, the tight tank is being used for other purposes, so,
So it's not being used for sewer?
no.
Is it like a grease trap, do you think, or
No, there's grease traps already there. I think it may be for watering in the fields.
watering of the fields?
Collection of water,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly, Tom, we should ask Tom, but it's,
Well, we'll find
it
out
can't
at
be
the
for
next meeting.
Right.
It might be, maybe they're replacing the grease trap or whatever, I don't know, but they would have told me, because I would have to prove it, because that's a kitchen design plan, and that would not go under Title V, so it has to be sewage. So maybe they're putting a bathroom in the field, I think, and that's what it is, and I'm only guessing.
Okay.
Because it's too far away and the bathrooms have to be closer, they were using porta potties, and maybe they're putting in the bathroom and they use a tight tank for it.
Right, and that makes sense to me. So my concern is, and I know Tom's good with it, I just don't think I have enough information to say go
I
ahead
think
with it.
the school's closed down, I don't think they're doing anything, I don't think it's a rush, I think it's, why don't we, I'll get you more information, I apologize, and have Tom write up something. Mr. Jalbert was here, he probably could explain the whole thing and what it was for.
We told him to leave.
He needed, I didn't think he probably would have stayed,
I did invite him to stay.
yeah, I think he needed to go home.
Yeah, well, plus we thought we were gonna be at the other meeting for an extended period of time.
But I'll get more information for the board and forward that. He called me and said, Jim, I don't think I need to send out, because the next door told him he had to notify 15 homes,
Butters.
the abutters, and he said, they're all on municipal water and they're way too far away. So how do they dictate that I have to notify 15 abutters? He said, that's not their purview, it's under the board, and it's a tight tank that is so far away from anyone that it, and everyone else on municipal water would never affect their wells because they don't have them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Mr. Jalbert, I said, but he was nice enough to show up. I didn't even realize he was here, Matt.
I didn't recognize him either. I haven't
didn't.
seen him in a long time.
I thought he was one of the people that.
I did too.
So I have to apologize to him when I talked to him.
Me
but
too.
I felt bad, because I think you probably would have taken him quickly, and he could have explained it better to you. So you have a better
I wouldn't
understanding.
have, no, I wouldn't have. We had an agenda and that was gonna happen the way it did.
Yes, and I think it was the right thing, but I think we wouldn't hold off on it, and August 1st is not that far away, Matt, so.
It's 3 weeks. I know Tom's good with it, I just, you know, I hate to say it, Jim, but even with the abutters, if the rule is the abutters need to know about it, if there's a distance where it says if you're gonna install a tight tank within, 500, like I know a well's 100 feet or whatnot, but if we're gonna, within 500 feet of a residence or whatnot,
It doesn't meet that,
I know it doesn't, it says an abutter, and I do believe there's probably 15 abutters over there.
but they're so far away, it doesn't meet the criteria for distance.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if they're
If they have a
exempt,
well,
if they're exempt for a different reason.
yeah.
Right, and I just want to make sure we're legal. I'm not,
No, I would wait. If there's any question, I don't think you should vote on something that you have a question on, we don't have full information. Because Mr. Jalbert's not here to speak on behalf of Bay Path, and I'm sure Bay Path will want fully informed before you voted on it.
to me, it's like this. Say one of the neighbors say, I want to know about it because I think they have the legal right to know about it.
Yeah, but he put it in the paper.
He did?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was one thing he had to do, put it in the newspaper.
So if he came to the board, and I know, it's just, it's ridiculous as far as
Yeah.
the legality, but I think if the abutters need, if it's, unless you can show me where, not you, but unless they can show me where, if it's more than X amount of feet, then you don't have to notify the abutter, I think the abutters have to be notified. I do think so.
He and I and Tom discussed it. Even though the butters, he has to have some kind of notification, either in the paper or whatever, and that's what's required. If no one is within the distance and does not have a well, then the right to know is clearly done through notification and a public notice in the paper, and that's what he
Okay.
did.
Then I'm great with that.
Instead of notifying 15 people who have municipal water and it would never affect them because the tank is so far away that they didn't meet the criteria of notification.
Right.
And Mr. Jalbert said, who defined that someone 2,000 feet away or more, and they're very far away,
Mhm.
would need to know about a tank? He said, I will put it in the newspaper, but public notification is very expensive.
Mhm.
And the schools, he's trying to save the money for the schools because it costs money even for the notification in the paper. And plus him and his time and notification cards sent out. And Lenny, Mr. Jalbert's old school. He wants to do things right.
Yeah.
So he did make a phone call. But I think we could put it off to the first. I don't think they even have it scheduled, but I can speak to the superintendent. If it's an emergency, I'll let you know, and maybe we could work something out quicker.
Yeah, because I just feel as though it's a little loose. I know you're saying Tom's good with it, and I'm gonna say if Tom's good with it, I'm good with it. He's our expert, and what he says, I'm good with.
Tom wasn't good with not having some sort of notification, as it says there must be. If no one's within the distance, it still needs public notification, means something goes in the paper.
Yeah.
They were too far away to be notified as an abutter, direct abutter, which would automatically notify them with a letter. I mean, Bay Pass always had grease traps and tanks
Oh, yeah.
and their own well. They've had tons of problems with their pumping station with keeping the water pressure up at the
Yeah.
school, which hopefully can be rectified before the next. I've been up there and there's no water in the school. I'm doing an inspection, no water at Bay Path. It's like, what? They've got municipal water. It's pumping up that hill, and I believe, and I'm not going to speculate, but I believe it's for bathrooms
Okay.
that are up in the field because they're too far away.
That would make sense.
And then the porta potty issue is an expensive one,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's that. They like to go over and tip them over, and they have to be monitored. You know?
And it's whatever, July, and they're nasty.
You're right.
So,
I'll get more information if you'd like.
John, you okay with tabling that?
Yeah, my only concern was if they did have some schedule where they were trying to get this in a couple of weeks before
Right.
school started.
I'll talk to the superintendent tomorrow, and I'll talk to Tom and Mr. Jalbert. I'm going to make sure I call Mr. Jalbert to let him know that, and maybe he can give me an email of an explanation to the chair, and I'll send it to him.
Okay.
But we still have to vote on it. That's the problem. We're
Yeah,
still gonna
I
be
still
locked into
think-
the first.
I don't know if that's gonna be an issue, I don't.
If it is, let me know, we can post a very
Okay.
brief
You
meeting,
can do
I
a
can make it.
Zoom meeting,
I
we
can
could
too.
get it, and then we could
Yeah,
do it
right.
that way.
All right,
if
I'm
you-
good with that.
Yep,
And if it's not gonna be a hindrance, then we'll just let it roll. We'll just play it out to the first.
Right, because you want to do it right. I certainly don't have all the information, so I think you're correct that we should probably, I know we've discussed it, there's so much going on, I didn't realize it was on here, and like I said, I didn't recognize him, that he was here, and
Hey, were we supposed to ask the selectmen about transfers?
yes, that'll be, don't worry, that can go on the next, put that on, we'll put that, that
Yeah.
could be new business for the next meeting.
Yeah, I missed that one. Okay,
Well, so did I.
all right.
that would have been a big question, you'd probably still be in there.
We'd
Yeah.
be in there.
They talked about it after we left,
They did.
I'm being told.
We did,
Oh, really?
we did. This is the Casella.
Mhm.
It's good till the end of the year, but Casella will not extend it past that, even though they do the municipal trash.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
but
took
we're start-
notes.
Yeah, but I think more than that, we're also trying to figure out if we can get something here for the town.
But yeah, pay as you throw,
Yeah,
that was the other
yeah.
part of that.
So, at least there, and along the same lines, who's gonna be doing the municipal trash
They are.
pickup? Casella will continue, their contract's been
Because they were the
extended?
lowest bidder.
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
Casella,
Okay, I
I
was not
believe,
aware.
was the lowest bidder and will continue, continuation of service.
All
Did it
right.
go out to bid?
I don't,
They said it did.
I think he posted it for bid, yeah.
I
That's why
wonder
they
if
got
the,
it.
that one guy that came in here.
Tim's Rubbish.
Tim's Rubbish, I wonder if he was aware that I went out to bid.
I hope he's aware that in town of Southbridge, you have a right to have your own hauler, then you don't get a tax increase, so you may be busy.
Say that again?
In the town of Southbridge, if you can prove that you have a contract with a hauler, then you're not increased with the taxes and have to give bags and the town pick it up. So if so I think there'll be a lot more customers coming.
Is that new?
It's going to be new, because their contract on November 16th ends with Casella.
I just, I feel like this board just wanted to make sure that individual was aware of the bid process. I'm just hoping he got a stab at it, because I know we tried to.
To be honest, man, Andrew handled it
Yeah.
with the selectmen, and I think they did fiscally what the responsible thing was the low bidder for the town, so.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure they did. Okay, anyways, we jumped up about 3 things on that. So, Jim, do you want to, all right, so, John, will you make a motion to table the Bay Path tight tank?
I'll make a motion that we table the Bay Path Tight Tank Plan Review until our next meeting on August 1st.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Jim, department head reports. You got anything?
Just very busy. Remember, we still have Mary Carpenter downstairs, who our community health coordinator. She's working closely with citizens in not only in Charlton but other towns under the supervision of this department. And we have Emily Quinn, who's on desks here. She's continuing with her training and doing inspections and water testing and doing a lot of stuff. So she'll be fully trained and out, and she's doing a lot with me. Kim is covering the office now until Andrea gets back, which is, this office is so busy, you almost need 2 people at all times because it becomes too stressful with the phone ringing, and we're so busy with other things that I have to make sure I come in early and help out. We're all shipping in and stuff, but Emily doesn't know the department and how it functions, so her function is not to answer phones and questions and
Right.
stuff. Hers is to be a field inspector for 5 communities. So if I could, there's a lot of work behind that too. So as far as Mary's downstairs in her office, feel free to stop and see her. She's doing wonderful work. She spent the day at Overlook helping some residents there in need of her counseling and her expertise. And she's helped out the town of Sturbridge recently with a hoarding case, and she's doing well.
So her role by definition, what is exactly she do?
Talking Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Mary is community health coordinator.
Okay.
She would help with hoarding cases, elderly who may have problems with health, getting insurance, can't pay the utility bills, looking for food, any of those aspects. If I can do a housing inspection and issue an order of condemnation, what do we do with the people? She helps with housing. She helps with housing assistance, Section 8. She helps with general counseling of general problems and needs of the people of the community, that whether they're children or elderly.
And is she specific to Charlton, or is she in other communities?
No, she's part of the community, the Charlton, the Coalition for Public Health.
Okay.
Which she's paid for by the grant that I receive in Charlton as the, but she works for 5 municipalities.
And so does Emily.
And so does Emily.
Okay.
And if they're not working for those towns, they're to report in their offices here.
I got you.
So they're not always busy in other towns, so they're obligated to report back here, because technically they're a Charlton employee.
I understand.
So, like, how long can you stay in Wales when they have like 3 restaurants or whatever, or don't have any issues? But if they have a current issue with housing or a complaint, whatever, she can go out and work there. She's been appointed by all these boards also to work there, so she does that. She works on Mondays in Sturbridge and Wednesdays in Sturbridge right now, and maybe on Fridays, because the current health agent's having some issues, health issues, and may be out for an extended period. But she's here most of the time, and she's has to complete her training, the local public health institute training, to move forward so she can go out. But I take her on all my inspections along with Kim when Andrea's here, so we're like a small team. But it's nice because I'm the one that's looking, but they're the ones that, we do everything on a tablet now.
Yeah.
To keep it, so it's the same in Charlton inspection, would be the same in Sturbridge as Wales, as it is in Sutton, as it is in Spencer. So we have a list of a lot of things to do, a lot of inspections, but the camps have been done. Camp Foskett had a hit on water. They had to get them out of they couldn't swim for 2 days, but they finally did another inspection, and they got back into the water. They had a problem with some geese. So the beaches have to be tested, so.
That lake has had issues here and there with the geese, depending on where they go, so it's...
They want to put up a fence, but they want to be, cognizant that they don't want to harm anyone. But again, there are almost 200 kids there. When I go there, they do a great job. I think your kids are there too, and I go back and the other day, and they're just kids having a great time.
Yeah, they do.
I think it's a big plus. 189 kids there the other day. So
yeah, I know it.
And it's been raining. It's tough, and that building is loud.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else for the department head reports?
I'm sure I've been getting about 9 million things, but yeah, we're looking to hire. We have another position we can hire for. Right now, I'm holding off on a position because we all 5 municipalities have to agree in the boards about who could we hire and what would they do. I already have enough to. I'm doing a lot of training of the new people. I do all of it, as a matter of fact, to get someone to come in. We're talking about maybe someone to do. We have to do sheltering. One of the things for Region 2 is to the Public Health Emergency Preparedness, which I currently is chair, which I'll be stepping down in August. I hadn't been their chair for too long. Is that we have to concentrate on finding sheltering and identifying sheltering with it. It's a lot of work, and we have to inventory all of our trailers and make sure through the pandemic we've had all this equipment that we didn't use that now is being thrown away because it expired.
So, just say the sheltering.
Yep.
For a specific event, like if we were to have an event or what?
I think the governor's mandated, her primary thing is to identify housing in the event of emergencies, in the event of taking in other residents. Charlton doesn't have hotels. The town of Southbridge has a hotel and conference center, which is probably occupied 20% of the time. Sturbridge has 1,000 rooms and how they are occupied. So you're going to have to identify in certain areas where there is housing available, and that's reported back to the state now.
But who needs the housing?
That's a question they won't answer at this point.
Oh.
But correct me if I'm wrong, it's in the event of a natural disaster.
Okay.
It would be utilized if you were unable to have your home be habitable.
Hurricane, tornado.
I'm probably speaking too soon.
No, I think that is one of the things, and that's what they identified through that. But we normally, through the Public Health Emergency Preparedness, the FEP for Region 2, which is 74 communities,
Okay.
we work on vaccinations.
Right.
Now we have a mobile vaccination unit van in the back. Now, all of a sudden, we've switched to now sheltering, which is normally under MEMA, which is under the control of your EMD, which is normally your fire chief, and they don't have the funding. All of a sudden, we have funding for that, and we've appropriated it to identify housing in every single municipality in the Commonwealth of Mass and report back to the state on what we would have for sheltering. Our sheltering would be at Nature's Classroom, which is fully sprinkled buildings. I have to identify that those are there, and that has to be reported back.
And that would be a shelter for our town in need.
Yes. Supposedly.
Or for as many that it could accommodate.
I think people's most fear, and what I asked, are they going to be bringing in refugees as they did, or people that were homeless that are living on the streets? Is that what this is about? And they can't answer that, because I think there's some underlying thing. Why would they need to know every single community and switch from emergency preparedness to now identifying sheltering? Oxford took in a family, and people were very upset about it, and they stayed at Camp Barton. And then people were upset because Camp Joslyn's now building new buildings, and they were worrying, what are they for? And are they bringing in people? To me, I one of my biggest things is that no one should be homeless, and I think there should be a place for everybody. Having said that, Charlton is not set up with hotels like other towns or whatever for sheltering, but the camps can hold people that are new, and that's what Camp Joslyn, but they won't let them put heat in there now. So, but there's already heat in Nature's Classroom, and they're fully sprinkled in some of them. So, those will be identified as potential spots, because you have to.
So we're talking like shelters for living quarters. We're not talking like
We're talking
using
living.
high school here, or like we're not talking shelter up for a storm. We're talking
No, and that's what I thought it was about, but we already have that, because the fire chief would do cooling shelter, or heating. There's a storm and everyone's lost their power. We'd open up because there's a generator here. We would make sure that people wouldn't freeze to death, and they would come. That's still part of that whole thing, but they want in-depth sheltering, meaning housing. So
Interesting.
very interesting. It's just another thing to do, but they want it done, so that's what's going to happen. But that's I'll keep you updated on that.
Which regulatory agency is asking for that?
This is through Public Health, FEP, which is
Yep.
Region 2, which is 74 communities. I'm just the chairman of Region 2.
Gotcha.
We usually concentrate on EDS, emergency dispensing sites, and identifying who would be in charge. Like Matt would be notified as the chair. You could be John's the next one to be notified. And we'd have an incident commander, and we'd have nurses there, and we would vaccinate everyone in case of an event of a pandemic.
Sure.
Well, during COVID, we never activated ours because it was too much an event, and the governor superseded the control of the Executive Board of Health and took it as emergency, and he said that it was more hospital-based in larger settings because it was too much. We're set up for a 3-day, we can vaccinate the whole town in 3 days. This was more than that, so it became an issue when we teamed up with Southbridge and that center, and we had more volunteers from Charlton there than anyone else, and we paid over $100,000 through FEMA money for nurses to maintain that throughout the whole thing. That's more than anyone else did. So
When they were doing the COVID
Yep.
shots.
for vaccinations, yep. So, and that's been an issue, identifying that, and that's something that's going along. And also, there's a lot of classes that come with this grant that I have to take. Potentially, racial equity has become a big thing in the Commonwealth of Mass. So I have to take classes, and these are now along just myself with someone else, and they ask you questions, you take a test, and then we have a group of us, and we break out into groups. But this is something that has to be done, and they're big on making sure that you have racial equity in everything in all your plans, that you include that. So I have to have inclusion of that. Whether someone speaks a different language or is different, I have to make sure I can accommodate them, even during food inspections, during housing inspections. Identify that. So
Interesting.
times changed.
Yep.
So that's been a big thing. I've been doing a lot of that, so I've been very busy with that, trying to maintain, and we just received our second portion of the grant, which has come out, so. And one of our nurses, Michaela, who's our COVID nurse, just had a baby, by the way, and let the board know, so. She's your nurse that works for you, and baby is healthy now, and her name is Aspen, and she'll be coming home soon, so.
Great.
So we still have 3 nurses on staff. I know you're an RN yourself, correct?
3 minutes
Yeah.
of battery.
Three
Is
minutes
anything
on the
important you
battery.
want to say? There's 3 minutes.
No,
Just
3
let you
minutes.
know.
Just to let you know, we do have nurses on staff that I can tell you about and keep you updated if you want. We can
Yeah.
talk, so, but I guess I better let the 3 minutes go to you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I don't have anything else. Welcome.
Thank you.
And John, do you have anything?
Nope.
So,
Welcome.
Thank you.
You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting of July 11th, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.